Hello again, students. So, the point of this lecture is to introduce the sum to product and product to sum formulas. This represents the final lecture in the series. It is sad, but the semester is coming to a close. And we'll start with the product to sum formulas, which will allow you to transform a product of trig functions into a sum of trig functions. And we'll explore exactly what those formulas are by trying to prove them. So I'll show you why they're true, and then we'll write down the formula we get after we've gone through the argument. So, in order to see why there should be a formula which turns a product of trig functions into a sum, let's just evaluate this sum of trig functions and see what we get. And I'll even engage in a little bit of color coding. Cosine of a minus b I'll put in red. So what is the cosine of a minus b? Well, we have an angle addition formula. The angle addition formula says that the cosine of a minus b is equal to the cosine of a times the cosine of b plus, right, the minus, this subtraction will go to addition, sine of a sine of b plus, and now cosine of a plus b, I'll do in blue. Cosine of a cosine of b minus sine a sine b. Alright, so let's take a look at what we have here. Let's simplify this. So I see cosine a cosine b plus cosine a cosine b. That's a total of 2 cosine a cosine b's. Next, we see plus sine a sine b minus sine a sine b. Those will cancel. That is, well, whatever. Those cancel. So, what do I have? I see that 2 times cosine a cosine b is equal to cosine of a minus b plus the cosine of a plus b. So let's take this and reduce it a little bit. So, this means that cosine of a minus b plus the cosine of a plus b over 2 is the exact same thing as the 2 has already been dealt with. Is the same thing as cosine of a cosine of b. So there's the first of the product to sum formulas. The cosine of a times the cosine of b is the exact same thing as cosine of a minus b plus cosine of a plus b all over 2. Nice. Cool. So, here's what I think I want you to do now. I want you to pause this video for a moment, go and fill in these next 2 blanks. Compute cosine a minus b minus the cosine of a plus b. Be careful with your parentheses to make sure to distribute that negative sign when you need to. Do the same thing with sine. Figure out what you get. Look at those expressions and see if you can look at them and tell me what these things will wind up being. Okay, great. So you did that. Now I'll go through and talk through it similarly. I'll use the same color coding convention. Cosine of a minus b. Well, that is equal to... no, that was supposed to be red. It was red previously anyway. That is equal to cosine a cosine b. Let's be careful with parentheses. Plus sine a sine b. Minus becomes plus. This minus became that plus. Next, I need to subtract. No, that should be a black. Subtract cosine of a plus b, which plus becomes minus, and the formula is cosine a cosine b, parentheses matter, so I'll put big parentheses right there, minus sine a sine b. And what does that reduce to? Well, let's simplify a little bit. So this is cosine a cosine b plus sine a sine b. I'll distribute that negative sign, minus cosine a cosine b negative negative becomes positive. So plus sine A sine B. And now you look at that, and you see what cancels again. I think I like the idea of using a highlighter to do the canceling. Cosine A cosine B minus cosine A cosine B. So this cancels with that. And the remaining two terms, sine A sine B plus sine A sine B, becomes 2 sine A sine B. So that means that 2 times the sine of A times the sine of B is equal to cosine A minus B minus the cosine of A plus B. If you want to just know what sine A sine B is, we'll divide both sides by 2. So this means that sine A sine B, so that's this extreme right-hand side divided by 2, that should be the same as this left-hand side divided by 2, is equal to cosine of A minus B minus cosine of A plus B all over 2. Nice, let's write that down. Sine A sine B is equal to the cosine, pardon me, sorry about that, the cats were having a kerfuffle. So, where were we? That's right. I was about to fill in what the sine of A times the sine of B is, which we just discovered. Sine A sine B is cosine A minus B minus cosine of A plus B, all that over 2. Similarly, you could write out what the sine of A minus B plus the sine of A plus B is, using the angle addition and subtraction formula for sine. Sine of A minus B, use the same color coding, why not, is sine A cosine B minus becomes minus, sine B cosine A. Or maybe I wrote it previously as cosine A sine B, but that's the same. Plus sine A cosine B. So right now I'm expanding sine of A plus B. Plus sine B cosine A. So now, let's see what stacks and what cancels. So I see a sine A cosine B plus sine A cosine B. So I see a total of 2 sine A cosine B's. And then the remaining terms, sine B cosine A has a minus, sine B cosine A has a plus. So this term cancels with that term. Those cancels, you're left with 2 sine A cosine B. So let's look at that. That means sine A cosine B, I can take this equality, divide both sides by 2. So that means sine A cosine B is equal to sine of A minus B plus the sine of A plus B all over 2. So let's see what we can use this to do. So let's use this to make some computations. So let's try to compute cosine of 5 pi over 12 times the cosine of pi over 12. Now, you might look at that and say, well, using either the half-angle identity or angle addition, we managed to compute the cosine of 5 pi over 12 using those tricks. But I say, you know what would be easier if we didn't have to? Let's just use angle addition to rewrite those. So let's do exactly that. Cosine of 5 pi over 12 times the cosine of pi over 12, that will be equal to the cosine of A minus B. So let's see, there, well, this will be, all right, that will be A. This will be B. So this will be the cosine of A minus B plus the cosine of A plus B all over 2. So expanding this out, I don't think I'm holding myself too much in terms of space by writing it out in such detail. This will become the cosine of 5 pi over 12 minus pi over 12 plus the cosine, maybe I should stick with the color coding, This one is the one that was red, that's A. This is the one that was in blue, that's B. Plus the cosine of 5 pi over 12 plus pi over 12 all over 2. And the punchline's about to come, because let's look at what's in each of those parentheses. That is equal to the cosine of 5 pi over 12 minus pi over 12 is 4 pi over 12. So this difference became that. Plus 5 pi over 12 plus pi over 12 is 6 pi over 12, all that over 2. And let's just keep on walking. So 4 pi over 12. 4 over 12 is 1 over 3. So that's cosine of pi over 3. Hey, neat. Pi over 3 is an angle that you can see in the unit circle, so I know what cosine of pi over 3 is. Plus cosine of pi over 2. Oh, I know what that is. That's 0 all over 2. So that's cosine of pi over 3, you'll remember, is 1/2. Plus cosine of pi over 2, you'll remember, is 0 all over 2. This is a quarter. So what's the payoff here? Even though I couldn't individually compute this or this without using some fancier tricks, if you know the product to sum or sum to product formulas, you can just write it down. Sorry, that was me taking a swig of coffee. So let's keep it going. Let's try to compute the sine of 5 pi over 12 times the sine of pi over 12, and the same thing but with the sines and cosines mixed. And here's what I want you to do. You go through and do it, come back, I'll wait, and then we'll talk through it together. Okay, cool. I waited here for you. You went and did that, and then you hit resume on this video. Let's talk about these computations. So, I see sine times sine. This formula looks useful if you want to compute a product of two sines. Now, what should you use as your A and your B? Well, yeah, that's right. You should use this as your A, and this as your B. And when you did that, well, I'll maybe go a little bit faster this time because you've already done the computation. What do you see? You see that the sine of A times the sine of B is the cosine of the difference minus the cosine of the sum. So let's write those down. So it'll be cosine of A, 5 pi over 12. And this was the sum, no, the difference was, minus B, so that's pi over 12, minus the cosine of A plus B, minus the cosine of A, 5 pi over 12, plus pi over 12. And let's just finish writing this out. Divide by 2. I almost forgot. Equals. And now, well, do the same thing as last time. 5 pi over 12 minus pi over 12 is equal to 4 pi over 12, which is pi over 3. So this difference is the same thing as pi over 3. So the first thing we see is the cosine of pi over 3 minus the cosine of, this should be a 5, it doesn't look like a very good 5. Let's fix that. 5 pi over 12 plus pi over 12, that's a total of 6 pi over 12. 6 pi over 12 is pi over 2. All over 2. And there's enough space, let's just finish writing. Cosine of pi over 3, you'll remember, is 1/2. Minus cosine of pi over 2 is 0, all over 2. This totals up to 1/4, which is interesting. We got the same thing from both computations. I don't know if you get the same thing to two different things. You should wonder, why should that be true? And in fact, there's a very good reason for it. So think about the angles we plugged in. 5 pi over 12 as opposed to pi over 12. Notice 5 pi over 12 is equal to pi minus pi over 12. So that means sine of 5 pi over 12 is the same as cosine of pi over 12. Do you guys remember when we did that? We looked at a unit circle. We noticed that if you rotate forward by an angle, or you rotate forward by pi over 2 and then backwards by an angle, you interchange the all of x and y coordinates because you're reflecting over the line y equals x. So this y coordinate, sine as a y coordinate, is the same as the cosine is the x coordinate. Cool. So that means that this sine of 5 pi over 12 is the same as that cosine of pi over 12. Similarly, the cosine of 5 pi over 12 is the same as the sine of pi over 12. So both of those should give the same answer. They're the exact same thing. Those are the same numbers, just written in the opposite order in a slightly different way. So yeah, they should be the same. Now let's do sine of 5 pi over 12 times the cosine of pi over 12. So this is a sine times a cosine. Here I see a sine times a cosine. Let's use that rule. So this says that this should be the same thing as the sine of a minus b. So that'll be 5 pi over 12 minus b pi over 12 plus the sine of a plus b, 5 pi over 12 plus pi over 12 all over 2. Cool. And now, well, it's the same simplification. This will become the sine of 5 pi over 12 minus pi over 12, so I'm looking right here. That's the same thing as pi over 3. Sine of pi over 3 plus the sine of pi over 2. All that divided by 2. And that is equal to, what's the sine of pi over 3? Well, let's use more space. That is root 3 over 2 plus 1 all over 2 is equal to root 3 plus 2. You'll rewrite that 1 as 2 over 2. All that divided by 2 and divided by 2 again. Oops, sorry about that. My elbow slipped. Nice. So, that's enough for now. So I'm going to stop about there. The important takeaway here is what are those three formulas and how can you use them? What we'll do in the next page or so is I'll get formulas that go the other way, formulas that turn a sum into a product. And those formulas will just come from looking at the product to sum formulas and writing down those with the correct inputs so that what we see at the end is exactly a sum. So we'll fill in these formulas and as a consequence get so we'll use the product to sum up here and as a consequence we'll get the sum to product right here. Cool. See you in a moment. Or whenever you watch the next video. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.